So in this video, I'm going to be setting up the Mega Moto 212 to get it ready for the GPS 180 or the Go Power Sports 180 3-hour endurance race out in Crawford, Texas. So far I've done 2 videos in the series. So in the first video, I raised the bike, I don't know, approximately 3 inches by relocating the shock mounts and then using the Go Power Sports front fork kit for the Mega Moto 212, and it raised the front about 3 inches. And then I added a pit bike exhaust. And then in the second video in the series, I made a custom intake manifold so I could tuck the carb under the frame so it wasn't sticking out the side here. I made up a mount to hold the carburetor so it's less likely to fall off. And I added a bigger intake sleeve. I added some foot pegs and reinforced the foot peg mounts because we broke them off last time around. And then I did a couple other things, so if you haven't seen those videos, go check them out. So this time around, for the third video in the series, I'm going to be adding a jack shaft sprocket, adding jack shaft bearings. I'm going to be adding a rear fender, which is not as straightforward as you might think on this bike, because you have the carburetor tucked under there. So it's kind of in the way of the fender mounts. So I'm gonna have to figure out something in here because I definitely want to block that air filter from the tire kicking up all the mud and stuff. So we're gonna have to figure something out there. And then I'm gonna be adding a dual tank setup using a Go Power Sports unitank, which I think will definitely help because in that race, time is money. Well, time is money, but so every time you have to pit to fuel up, you're taking away from your lap times. So I'm gonna figure out a dual tank system where I mount this, the unitank, up on top and then run it into the existing tank. And that way I pretty much more than double the fuel capacity on this bike. So hopefully we can go pretty much the whole race without having to fuel. And if we do, it'll be easy because it's just right up here on top. I mean, before it was kind of a pain to fuel the bike because of the tank neck is between the frame rails there. I mean, so it was hard to do it quick. And then I'm gonna be adding this big block. No, just kidding. I'm not gonna add the big block. So I think I'll go ahead and do the not so fun stuff first and replace this sprocket and the jack shaft bearings. So if you look at this thing, I mean, it looks pretty good. The teeth look really thick and not wore down. But if you really look at it, you can see the teeth are kind of bent forward just a little bit. I mean, so it definitely has some wear to it. So what the heck, might as well swap it out just to be safe. I mean, because that is a long race. Yeah, this was some pretty tough chain. I mean, because this still looks really good after that 3-hour race. I mean, the bearings feel okay, but what the heck? We're already this far, might as well swap them out. All right, so those bearings feel pretty good. Yeah, they feel nice and smooth, but the new bearings feel even better. So, let's see if I can remember how to put this back together. Washer, the keyway, then the new sprocket. Snug that down for now until I get the other side together. So while I'm at it, I will go ahead and install a new belt. Gonna snug this down a little bit, but not too tight. Now I can tighten this side up. So that was easy enough. I mean, it's good, cheap insurance just for one less thing to go wrong. So now I'll try to figure out if I can mount this fender on there somehow, or at least part of it. I might have to cut it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut this because it's gonna hit my muffler. And all I really need is just the carb to be blocked. Put my mark on here so I can get it kind of straight, sort of, kind of. So this is what I came up with. So the circle part there goes around the muffler, and I use my grinding or cutoff wheel. Makes easy work of this thing. So this should fit around here like that. It totally clears the muffler. but it seals off that air filter. And then I can run a straight bracket across from here up to this fender mount. So I think we'd be okay right there. So just make up a aluminum bracket real quick. Got some aluminum here. And then I'll run a bracket across from the fender mount to fender mount. So 9 inches wide and then 3 inches on each side. So mark it at 15 inches. Bend this section up 3 inches on this side and then 3 inches on that side. And we have 9 in the middle. We should be good. So I got my aluminum mount just wedged here between the fender mounts just to kind of get a fit for this thing. And if I bolt that right there, I think it'll work because it clears the exhaust and it clears the swing arm. Go ahead and mark the contour of these mounts and cut this so that way I know exactly where to put it on next time, and then I can drill it and bolt it on there. So I got it all bolted together, and I put the heads of the bolts on the bottom just to keep them away from the tire. That turned out pretty slick. So the bolts don't hit the air filter. That's what I was wondering. It just clears that pipe. And I think we have enough here for the clearance on the swing arm. We'll find out. But if not, I could always cut that down more, but I think it might be okay. So that should block a lot of the dirt from hitting that carb. Definitely help it out. So on this tank, I'm gonna have to mount the tank about right there so it doesn't hit the seat. So that means I'm gonna have to weld a chunk of metal from there to there and then from there to there. So I can run a bolt through there and then bolt the tank down there. Man, there's a big area in here. It's too bad I didn't have a bunch of aluminum. I could just make up my own tank. So I'll mark me up some mild steel and then weld it in here. So that ought to work. So now I got to figure out the pattern on where to drill the holes for the unit tank. So I made up some mounts under here to bolt to the other mounting points. I'll just drill a hole there and bolt it to this area here too, and then the seat will go over that. I need to mark where I want the fuel line to come out to meet the bottom gas tank. So right about there. So I drilled a 1/2 inch hole and popped that in there. So that should come out right into the other tank. So now I just got to figure out where to go into the other tank. So either up top, up here through the vent line, or drill a new hole and put a new fitting and then use this as a vent line to come out. So I'll probably mount this tank down a little bit lower so that way I have room for the fuel line. So I got my spacers in there and I dropped it down, I don't know, about 1 inch or so. So I'm going to run this 1/4 inch fitting on the cap, and that way I'll try to feed it through the cap first. And if that doesn't work, I'll go ahead and run another 1/4 inch fitting on the tank somewhere for a vent. Yeah, so if that doesn't work, then I'll run another 1/4 inch fitting down here on the side. And then run the fuel through this into the tank and then vent through the top. So I'll go ahead and drill this out and run a fitting in here, because this is just a little bit too small to run fuel through. What's nice about this cap is super thick, so it's going to take a nice tap. So I'll throw this on there and we'll see if it'll feed fuel from the top tank to the bottom tank. So after all said and done, I went ahead and tapped in 2 fittings anyway, so that way if I need a vent, it's already on there, and if I don't, I can just cap it. But at least that way I can put the entire thing together without having to take it back apart if I do need a vent. And another reason I went ahead and tapped both in there is when I ran the tank up here, the outlet comes out really close to the other tank on top, so the fuel line is just really crimped. So just to alleviate that problem, I'd rather just go ahead and feed it down to the bottom here, below the vent. So I got the completed gas tank system, but the question is, so when you fill the top tank and then the vents in the second tank, as the fuel goes down and fills the lower tank, once it gets up to that vent, will it fill the vent and then make the vent useless? Or will it just continue to fill the lower tank and then continue to fill up to the top tank without making the vent useless? So here's a completed system. So you get the top tank, and the fuel line comes down into the bottom tank. And then you have the vent line, I don't know if you can see it up there, that comes out here, then over, then it dumps down right there. So it's above the lower tank. Then you have, of course, the fuel line going into the carb. So let me fill this thing up and we'll see what happens. The worst that could happen, it doesn't work at all, but that's okay. I still got the lower tank. So now, of course, the shutoff valve is leaking when you turn it on. So I think I'm just gonna run a line from the tank to the carb without a filter or a shutoff valve, because that way there's less stuff to go wrong. So there we go. So there's no filter or shutoff valve. So nothing to break. So now let's fire it up and see what happens. And then I'll run this tank down until the top tank's empty. I mean, it's down there a ways. It's got about, what, a quarter of a tank or so? And we'll see if it flows down as we go, which I think it will. Made it out the driveway. That's a good sign. With this lift on here, this thing is a smooth riding bike. Even before it had the lift, it was a smooth riding bike. All right, we'll see if anything fell off of this. Looks like everything's on there. So far, so good. So let me cruise it around a little bit more and see if I can run some of this fuel out of here. the construction site. Building a bunch of houses down here. Looks like they're going to build quite a few. Looks like it's going to be a pretty big build. Quite a few houses. Yeah, it's a big lot. Well, no fueling issues so far. All right, everything worked out pretty good. And I ran the tank down to where it was running off the bottom tank. So anyway, that's pretty much it. I might swap out the wheel bearings before we run out to Texas. And then I think that's pretty much it. And then the fender worked out pretty good. It totally cleared the swing arm. So no issue there. So I think we're pretty much good to go to head out to Texas. So quick update, I went ahead and removed the vent tube and it works perfect. So now I'm only running just a simple line from the carb to the tank, and then from the lower tank to the upper tank, and that's it. So I blocked off the vent with a cap right there. So it vents from the top just fine. I've cruised it around and it works perfect.